Hello everybody, welcome to another video. This video right here, I'm gonna kind of start the base for this Pumpkinhead model, and I gathered some resources and some references for it. There was a few different variations of something for him to stand on. You can see the reference on the side of the window. So what I start out with the cylinder and start kind of basic. I just need the model to have something to be propped up on. And what I really like to do is print this, but I don't know how much I want to put into the base, given that each piece has to be printed out. And what I mean by that is how much detail do I need to put into this so I can have a more successful print in the end. Because a lot of things hanging off, like the grass and little things like that, they work in a render. But if I'm going to try to print this, then I got to think in a little different kind of little different style. I need to think more physical world than a created render. And so that's something I'm kind of thinking about as I go. Do I want to make that grass just kind of like sculpted grass instead of something a little bit more rendered look? Because the rendered look will be cool for, a picture, but printing it's not going to read the same. So you got to kind of play back and forth with this as I'm learning. I'm still kind of new to the 3D printing for models, but I'm learning as I'm going, and I'm learning that little details are a little bit more complicated if you have them pointy and stuff like that. So that's something that I'm running into, is that sometimes you gotta kind of like balance that pivot there. So what I'm doing here is just kind of using the deformers, push and pull the model up and down. His leg seems to need to be propped up a little bit more, so I kind of pose him a little bit better to fit this model. I'm okay with having to change all that. And I want to make them integrated with the base, so that's something I want in the end with this model. A lot of the pictures showed this stump of mound of dirt with pumpkins around it, and the pumpkins all look kind of cheesy. And that movie, if you've seen it, it's kind of like, it is a kind of a cheesy movie, but getting that cheese in there. So I'm trying to adjust his leg now. The video sped up, as like most videos. If you've gone back in my other ones, I try to speed them up so that we're not using too much time watching every little detail. It's sped up a little bit faster, so I don't work this fast, just for people who are watching new to these channels or my videos. Kind of like to keep the momentum going, because sometimes I'll have, like my brain will just stop and I'm just kind of like staring at a model, and you don't need to see that. Speed it up, then you don't have to know whenever I'm just like, what is going on here? So, and I'm trying to get the foot a little bit more grounded, trying to give a little more gravity to the model so that it doesn't look like he's offset. I want him to blend like he's meant to be on this base. So I've got the base model, and I'll detail a little bit of it too in this video. I believe the next thing I add after this is the pumpkins, and that's something that kind of play with a little bit with the cloth deformer inside of ZBrush that's been added later on, and you'll see that in a bit. But right now I'm just adding some edge loops to this cylindrical piece of modeling, trying to make it look a little bit more like the pictures, and the references are all different. They all kind of vary, so I'm debating on adding the tree stump that's in each little picture. I'll probably add it. It'll probably add a little more character to it, and just go from there. I want to have, like, for this base, if you're curious about where I'm going with it, I'm going to put the roots, kind of put them into the side of it. and make it look kind of veiny with some root and more earthy look. It could be kind of an interesting texture in the end. Something to play with too if it ends up being painted or anything. Can add some little details. So if you can see here, it's kind of dark with the references, and they're all kind of really dark and moody. But you kind of get the idea. It's some kind of dirt mound and spooky looking, if you were to look at it. I'm also curious if I should change his hands later on. That might come as I get the base a little bit more grounded. So here comes the pumpkin, and I use the basic geometry shapes inside of ZBrush to do the pumpkin, because why not? It's halfway there. You got your segments, you got your geometry, it kind of outlines what I want to see. On here, you can see that I'm kind of going back and forth with the references. And that's something I play with between the first one and the second one. The one with the blue, it's real cheesy. The pumpkins look like props, I guess, or horrible, or not horrible props, but they look they don't look like a pumpkin to me, but they're pumpkins in this picture. I don't know how to explain that. I wanted more of a pumpkin feel, because when somebody sees the model, they're gonna look more towards that instead of the rounded pumpkin on the side reference. But I still try to follow it a little bit closely. Pushing and pulling, vertices, and subdivisions. And I'm using the edge loops, the segments, to kind of give me an idea of where to paint. Radial symmetry helps here always. And just start sculpting. And this is probably the quickest thing you can do, is just radial symmetry it down. Give it a little. I had thought about extruding the polygons and doing it that way, but something about that told me that it would look more computer generated than me just sculpting it in. Doing it this way, I feel it gives a more natural feel, more chaotic than to just extrude polygons per each little face, because sometimes the eye will pick up on that and just doesn't read the same to me. Or in my eye, it always looks computer generated if I do something equally too perfect. And pumpkins aren't perfect. Looking at that reference, it does not look perfect at all. It looks kind of messy and floppy and lumpy and everything else. Using symmetry here is just for speed, but I end up kind of deforming it a little bit more as I go along. Smoothing it out a little bit, just kind of getting the shape of the pumpkin in there, so you get that pumpkin feeling. And these are going to be like duplicated in the scene to where they're just copy pasted around and adjusted as needed. And that's really what I wanted. Nothing too in depth. So using the masking tool, I'm going to extract out the center for the little root, the vine part of it, because it seems to be a quick solution for this. And I just kind of play with the deformations, or I think I sculpted out going from here. Get the idea. Looking at that reference on the corner, it's kind of looks like an elephant trunk in a way. So I kind of follow this a little bit, trying to keep to that references for this, or back and forth, like I said, and I kind of like it. I like that. If I do leaves, I'm debating on doing leaves for the pumpkins, but if I do them for this, and keeping in mind that I'm going to 3D print this, I might have to make them a little thicker and a little more, I don't know how to say it, kind of toy, more leaning more like a toy than a render, like I had pointed out earlier. So I'm trying to adjust the look of it, and so I think it needs more subdivisions or to be decimated or something. Not decimated, Dynamesh in here. But I'm kind of playing with it, trying to give it a little more organic, natural feel to it. Not so perfect. And just going from there. I'm gonna make it like that trunk, like the end. So there's that. So just trying to make it look like a root. Just painting in clay brush, and just putting in those little viney looking details. And this is the fun part to me, just kind of adding the little details. Just, I don't know, you just get lost in doing this, and you just slowly start adding more and more, and, you know, keeping the art flowing, and there's not really much to it. You just keep it detailed as you go. Since I'm going to put these as like multiple versions, what I do is add subdivisions to the root part and the base part, and I merge them together. And so if they have the same subdivision numbers, they'll merge down together and keep that subdivision, so that I can play with that later on whenever I do the cloth simulation, because I need to drop it down to actually not be so heavy for just quick simulation. I tried it with the high subdivisions, and it kind of locked up a little bit. It didn't lock up, but it just kind of stuttered. I don't know, instant simulation always feels better than a little stutter. So little details, little roots, vines. I don't know if I'm going to paint it in here. Depends on time. Maybe if I want to make a full render, I'll probably go back and redefine some of the details instead of looking more towards a print, and lean more towards the render later on. But for now, I just wanted to kind of get it printed. I want to see the process of what it takes to make something bigger than a little character to print. And I plan to use this on the resin printer. And the thing about the resin print that I'm using is a photon, anycubic photon. But the build plate is so small compared to the other printer that I have. And it's interesting to play with and try to get things to work. And it's possible. I just got to slice up the model and break it down to where it all fits together in the end. As long as nothing messes up in the print, it should be fine. So getting closer to the end of this pumpkin, to where some little details. So it's looking pumpkin-y. Gonna adjust it a little bit. Yeah, squish it a little bit, make it fit. And each one of these pieces I'll probably hit the boolean together or something, so that they're one piece. You can tell, and that's the reason why I kind of speed these videos up. You get lost in these details. You just want to keep sculpting and sculpting and sculpting. There's nothing wrong with that either. But for people watching, sometimes it's just like, oh man, it's a lot of sculpting on a little root, and it just part of the process. It's fun though. I'm sure for whoever's watching this has a copy of ZBrush or is using ZBrush, or else you wouldn't really be watching this video, I would imagine, unless you have a different sculpting software, and that's okay. They all kind of jive together. Um, but it's so fun. Just, I guess for me, this technology wasn't really around when I first started doing 3D. And like 20 years ago, or even 15 years ago, ZBrush was around, but it wasn't what it is today. It was like a 2.5D kind of thing, and it did the liquid Terminator looking kind of thing, but it wasn't this. It wasn't sculpting in 3D at the time, or so. It was sculpting, but it wasn't 3D sculpting in the same manner. And now you got all these tools, and it's quicker, it's faster, computers can handle it, and it's just fun. So now I'm gonna Z-remesh. It looks like, try to have the resolution so it's not so heavy. Usually I'll do that. I'll put it at half and drop it, and then I do a duplicate of that model and then just project it back onto that. That way it kind of keeps the shape. And really I just need the shape and some of the detail. I don't need it to be perfect. So you can tell that projecting it onto the other model, going from there. So there you go. You got a low poly model of it, and I keep the same subdivision level like I mentioned earlier, so I can merge them down together and keep those subdivisions. So now when you look at the subdivision, I can drop it down, and it's actually less not so heavy, I guess. So I'm going to drop it on the space, just kind of get it filled out a little bit more. This is the fun part to me. Just kind of set dressing in so many words, like you're dressing up your space, and as you do it, it comes to life. You can start seeing things how it will be, or blocking out shapes here and there. So I kind of got an idea with, putting maybe 3 pumpkins or so. I don't want to go nuts with it. I could probably put a bunch of pumpkins and overkill it, but I just want 3 of them to give you an idea. Pumpkinhead, right? The movie even pushes the pumpkin theme too. It's like, hey, pumpkins everywhere in those pictures. So it's all good. What I wanted to do, so what you're seeing right now is I'm just getting them placed, and then I want to use the cloth deformations on to the base, so that whenever it falls down, it presses in it. And since these tools are still new to me, as they're new, you always want to play with the settings and this and that. And I got a basic understanding of how they work. It's something I need to sit down and play with a lot more than what I have lately. Because you can see right here, it just melted into the scene, and that's cool too. I like that, but that's not the look I'm going for. And so I increase the firmness of the model so it doesn't kind of blob into itself like a puddle of melted pumpkin. I try to put a little inflate on it, but the inflate kind of like deforms it too much, and so I think I turned it off in a bit. And you can see it makes it look like it's setting in there. Now it's a little bit more, but as I add the firmness to the model, as it simulates right here, you get a little different feel. So now instead of simulating with gravity, I wanted to use the move cloth moving gizmo on this. So that's what I do. I just kind of push it down. Blob. And it's so cool. That's just fun. Even when you're doing it, if it doesn't work, like for me, if it wasn't the look I was going for, but it's still like, oh man, that's fun. It still makes doing this stuff, entertaining. You're like, oh, that's neat. And so I kind of got a little look that I need right there. And I'm going to probably go back and redefine some of the details, push and pull with the move tool, so it's not so crazy. See, that was the inflate. I was like, what is it going to do? And it made it blow up again. So I start go back to the move transform, and there we go. It's pretty neat how I just it's very easy to use. It's not overly complicated on the tools. So just pushing them in the ground and giving them a little footing. They didn't turn the pumpkins when they're growing them, so they're gonna set in the ground a little bit more. Always got to go turn the food in the garden throughout the year when I'm growing real food, not digital food. But you always just have to turn them. Sometimes the sun will cook them or whatever. I give a little hand. But you can see right here. Look at that. That's cool. That's fun. That kind of saved me from having to do a little bit more work than we would have used in the past, and using the tools we have now to our advantage, and that's fun stuff. So scaling the pumpkins, kind of giving them little variations. You don't want them to all look the same. I probably should have rotated a few of them. I probably will later on, but for what this is, it's fine. It's gonna work. I'll probably move the little stems to not be facing. I thought I rotated one of them, but I don't know. It's hard to say. Like I said, this is sped up, but I'm just doing a play-by-play. So sometimes I gotta remember what I did. And there you go. I'm moving it around. So I did kind of vary it in my own way. And there goes back to sculpting again. I'm like, I gotta make it a little different than the other ones. So try not to keep them looking the same helps. Your eye will pick up on things, even though your brain tells yourself like these are like identical in a way. I don't know. The mind does weird things when you look at models, and to make them look more realistic is more chaos is what you need. Perfection is where your mind will pick up on it, and it's like something's not right here. So now I'm going to start sculpting in the base details on this. Right here, and pretty much I'm just going to use a clay brush and go in there. But right now I'm putting edge loops so that whenever I model this, it's not so bad. I needed to have a lip, so I'm just kind of pushing it down a little bit. Oh, and that's the thing. You got to make sure you rotate your model, look around, because if you don't, you'll get things like that, and then you got to go either back to fix it, or just part of it. Part of sculpting, part of modeling. It's always a fun process, but sometimes the process gets a little messy. So now you can kind of see from a distance, you got your pumpkins, you got your base, and now I'm going to start sculpting in the little details inside of here. And this is more like layering a cake. This is going to be the first layer. What it's going to be is the dirt of the base. And if you can see right here, I'm pulling up the reference on the side. And what I wanted to do is have the dirt kind of mound and look kind of organic. Later on, I'll add on to the roots that kind of show through. But for now, this is the first part of the cake. Just trying to get it formed and a little more definition for this. So I probably could have used radial symmetry, but for this, well, no, I couldn't because I deformed it. I could have probably did it before. I could have probably have done it before I deformed it. I'm sorry, I got tongue-tied. And sculpted it and then deformed it. But again, like when it's random and chaotic and organic, then it's a little more, it's fun. It's just fun doing this. It seems like a long process, but it's fun. And I just, it's part of that kind of setting your mind at ease. It's a little just getting lost in the details and just making those details pop. And you can see like how the base is forming now, and then I'll add some grass on top of this. That's another part of the cake. You're layering layering on top of this. So you'll have grass, then I'll have roots, and I'll probably go back and start adding some alpha maps to kind of give it a little bit more definition to read a little bit more. And that's part of it. You get your base, and you can see how simple I started, and then go from there, and then start sculpting in the details. I might put some footprints just to kind of give him a little weight to the creature, so he looks like he's in the ground and actually integrated with the environment he's standing on. And that's just little details here and there. This is a slow process, but it's a fun process, like I said. And yeah, that's a lot of this video. So what I mainly did is get the base kind of established. The pumpkins I needed, so I'll put those in. For the next round, I plan to do the tree trunk, the roots, and some of the grass, so I can get it integrated a little bit more, and just see how that flows. And then once you know, when you, like you're painting, when you step back from your art or your canvas, you look at it from a distance and then kind of reevaluate where you want to go from there. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just kind of sculpting, stepping back, looking at it, and going from there. But yeah, that's a lot of the video. Hopefully, you know, I can get this a little bit further this week. You can jump in this model and start sculpting a little bit more around other things I'm doing, and probably get another video out too. I'd like to try to get a consistent video out there more often, so that's a little bit something I'm working with, trying to push out more video content. Keeps me going forward, keeps me motivated to keep creating too. It's fun because you document it and you look back, and that's what it is. So I appreciate you watching this video. Thank you for watching. If you like it, press like on the bottom there, and hopefully you learned something. So until I put the next video out, you know, hope you'll stay tuned. So thank you for watching.